As you recall, we have been talking about parts of speech. We have already discussed nouns, pronouns, verbs, adverbs, adjectives, and conjunctions. We've talked about how each one is used and where in a part of a sentence each one has its place. One of the two types of speech we will work on today you are very familiar with using. The other one is used often when writing, but you may not know yet how to identify this part of speech. You will need to look for the patterns you notice with the two types of speech and how they are different from each other to be able to distinguish the characteristics of each type of speech. Today, I will provide you examples, and then I will ask for you to find similarities and differences with those two examples to further your understanding of the two parts of speech we will cover today. Presented on this slide are the examples of preposition and adverbs used in a sentence. The preposition and the adverbs are given in the bold text. You'll notice some of the prepositions and adverbs are the same. At this time, you would randomly pick students to read the sentence and then make sure that they say whether it's a preposition or an adverb for each sentence. You then provide the students 4 minutes to make a list of things they notice about the usage of adverbs and prepositions and how the sentences are alike and different. If students are still stuck after giving the 4 minutes, then you would want to move on to questions like, what are some similarities you notice when using prepositions? What are some similarities you notice when using adverbs? What are some differences you notice between adverbs and prepositions? Even if they're the same word, they might be used differently. And then the last question I would think about and have students think about if they were still stuck is what kind of patterns do you see in the way that either part of the speech is used? After the 4 minutes are up, you would then take some time to create an anchor chart. The anchor chart would indicate what students believe the patterns and the similarities and differences are between prepositions and adverbs and how they are used in a sentence. Before moving on to this slide, you would want to ensure that you have allowed students to give their answers of the differences between prepositions and adverbs, and you have listed them on an anchor chart. If students are still unable to give a clear distinction between prepositions and adverbs, I would then ask further probing questions. Is there a location in the sentence that both parts of speech are located? Clearly, you're looking for students to tell you that they are located near verbs. Then I would have them think about, does one part of speech seem to have something after it? With prepositions, there should be an object that follows a preposition. And then the last probing question I would ask is, do both parts of speech have anything in common? After doing this, I would then provide the next two slides that are called distinctions. I would explain how both adverbs and adjectives modify verbs. And then I would give some further clarity on the idea that adverbs tend to answer some questions. I have previously discussed with students that adjectives also answer questions, but they do not answer the same questions. Adverbs tend to tell us when, how, where, to what extent, or why something has occurred. For the last thing I would leave students with, I would reinforce that prepositions have an object after them. I would also remind students that prepositions tend to tell about time, space, and direction. With all of this in mind, I would then give students time to write down their own definition of a preposition and an adverb in their class journals. Since my school has many ELL learners, I would provide sentence stems for students who are requiring a little more defined way to write down their own definition of each part of speech. The last thing I would make sure students do after having presented all this information is to have students use 3 examples of each part of speech. So students should be able to give me 3 examples of an adverb and 3 examples of a preposition. The goal would be for each one to be in a sentence and be clearly labeled. Hopefully this helps, and I would only distinguish with the ideas I have used in this PowerPoint due to the age and level of my learners.